People who have been catfished. How did you catch on that you were being lied to? Not me, but my father-in-law. He lost his wife 7 years ago, and after a while was tired of having an empty house and no one to talk to. He tried online dating, but went to a free site and got hooked. The lady who claimed she lived in Chicago started chatting him up. She was an international traveler for business. She had pics and seemed friendly. They chatted for a few weeks and then made plans to meet after she came back from business. He kept telling us some of the details about this amazing lady he met, but we didn't want to be too invasive, so didn't ask a lot of questions. Luckily for him, her trip back was a holiday Thanksgiving weekend, and we all happened to be at his house. She was supposed to fly in on Saturday, and he kept going to his room in private to chat with her about the details of her trip. On Friday, he came down all sad and said she sent him a heartbreaking message. Her plane got stuck somewhere in Europe due to weather, forget where, and while she was waiting, her purse was stolen. She had no phone, no credit cards, no ID, no tickets, etc. She needed him to send money so she could get back home, and she was scared and alone in a country she'd never visited. If we hadn't been there and he told me some of the details, which of course set off my BS alarms, he would have sent her a couple grand to get back home. I explained to him the concept of catfishing and he didn't believe me at first. I had him ask her for some more details. How was she reaching him with no phone? She claimed she was borrowing laptops at the airport. How come she never talked on the phone? She said she gets very shy on the phone and prefers using the dating site to chat. What is the flight number so we can track it coming to the USA? She provided one, but it was bunk and not stuck due to weather. When we called her out on it, she tried the emotional tactic and said she was shaking in sadness and betrayal that he couldn't trust her after she gave him her heart. She kept going for emotional responses but stopped responding with any attempts to get actual proof from her. He stopped responding, and a day or two later, she messaged him one last try and claimed a friend paid for a new ticket for her, but she still needed money, a lesser amount, to pay some sort of fine or she would be stuck there and could maybe go to jail. He wouldn't want her to have to go to jail, would he? Yeah, it sucked that it happened because he's a super trusting guy. Even a few weeks later, he wasn't for certain that she wasn't real, despite the whole family telling him it was a scam. I even kind of think he sent her the money in the first part of the original ticket, and the family didn't get involved until the stolen purse was part of the scam. Of course, she was most likely a he using stolen pics online. I did an image search in one of the photos, but nothing came up. Moral of the story time: if you have anyone over 50 in your life, make sure you explain to them about different types of internet scams, especially if they're into shopping, dating, meeting friends, etc. It's a whole different world than what they grew up with, and the scammers are getting very good at it. I know a few elderly that have been scammed over the phone, but the internet brings a whole new level of scamming. Yep, gotta look out for them old folks. Story 2. I actually unintentionally catfished someone. I was playing League of Legends and this guy added me after we played a game. His English was broken, but I didn't think much of it, and we started to duo together. We did really well, but strangely he kept referring to me as a she. Again, I didn't think twice about it and I just kept playing with him, but eventually he started to get real creepy and told me all these things about him. We found out that there was a significant time difference between us, but he would log on at the most ridiculous times for him just to play with him and started to become a white knight. Whenever anyone would trash talk me, pretty normal, he would vehemently defend me and start fights with other team members, opposing players and whatever. Shortly after that, he would start saying, "Goodnight, BB," which I thought was bye-bye, so I would say, "Haha, goodnight, BB," back to him. Then he'd send me hearts, and I thought we were guys being guys, so I would jokingly message the heart back to him. Eventually, he started calling me his girlfriend when he was defending me, and I realized he full-on thought I was a female the entire time. I messaged him after that game and was like, "Dude, I'm a guy." And he went on a rampage. He started cussing me out, and by the end of it, the reason why he thought I was a female was because of my username and because I used proper grammar and spelling. Story 3. I was talking to this girl, initially from Twitter. It was easily a 9 out of 10. One of the most attractive girls I've ever seen. That was my first clue because the odds of her instantly going for an average guy like myself, whom she had never met, were very slim, especially if she had a fair few followers showing interest. Eventually, there were loads of inconsistencies in the stuff she told me about herself. She was way too clingy for someone I had never met. I just put that down to me being different, i.e. not reciprocating any feelings, never even telling her how attractive she was, etc. She wanted to meet with me, but I decided against it after speaking to a friend who knew her in real life, and he told me she had a long-term boyfriend. Despite her not having much experience with guys, according to her, I then started hearing rumors that she had 2 accounts on Facebook, and one of them, the one that added me, could be a fake or decoy, etc. After that, I figured it was too much of a hassle to keep up with. There were so many signs to avoid her, so I cut off all contact. Funnily enough, I read a blog post a few years later from the real girl who said that this girl had been impersonating her for the past 10 years, had been leading guys on, etc., and went really far with her charade to the point where she seemed mentally unstable. So, bullet dodged, I guess. I figured I'll say a bit more. What I should clarify is that this girl was not just using someone else's pictures. She was using the girl's life. She pretended to be the exact same girl in the picture and used her first name, her friends' names, her life story, everything. So, in essence, anyone would think they were talking to the real girl and could tell the real girl everything about her, even though they didn't actually know her. She made fake Facebooks of loads of her friends, used to post pictures, taking them off the real girl's Facebook, and tag the fake profiles of these friends in, leaving comments. Arguably, this was identity fraud more than catfishing, but the blog post stated that the catfish apologized and acknowledged she was crazy. She just didn't know how to stop and only did it all because she enjoyed the fake life more than her own. And she never did stop until that blog post came out. I know way too many people like this. Story 4. Saw a guy, Redfish, with a cute profile picture on Grindr. Messaged him in the app, never expected a response. He replied really quickly and was really eager to chat. He sent 2 pictures, but I noticed that his hands were a lot bigger in one. Ignored it. But then a random stranger, Catfish, messaged me on Grindr claiming to be Redfish's friend, how they were really close and go to the same college. I responded politely, just making conversation. Redfish then messaged me later that night, asking how I found Catfish. I said he was alright, but I already knew the deal, so I just played along. I just wanted to see how long he could keep this up. I took a screenshot of the profile picture from Redfish's account and Google image searched it, and it was on a ton of Tumblrs. After a few days of talking to the both of them, and Redfish basically talking about Catfish the whole time, Redfish's account blocked me. So I messaged Catfish to say, "Hey, what's up with Redfish? Why did he block me?" Catfish says he knows nothing about that and says he'll ask, then comes back and says Redfish won't tell him why. Right then, I just replied, 1 fish, 2 fish, Redfish, Catfish. Lame, I know, but I really like Dr. Seuss. Catfish then types one mother of a story of how he's shocked that I would even think he would do that to someone and that he would never because he's been a victim of catfishing before, to the extent of someone stalking him and having to take out a restraining order. I don't believe it for a second because Catfish is not very attractive in general. Sorry if I sound judgmental. I then told him how I googled the profile picture and he confessed to all of it. He kept making some excuse about how he was tired of being on the sidelines and he just wanted to not be ignored. The whole time he just kept making excuses for his behavior, not once feeling like he had done something wrong. Story 5. I met this Welsh girl on 4chan that was into a lot of the same bands as I was, liked the same comedians as I did, and shared a lot of my political views. She was freaking awesome. We stayed up all night talking about anything and everything. We went on to spend a good 6 to 8 hours almost every single day talking pretty much constantly for the next 3 months. She was amazing. Funny as hell, had really interesting opinions in a lot of things, introduced me to a ton of new music and films, and was just generally a really lovely person. I was incredibly depressed at the time, and had just dropped out of college the year prior due to ever-increasing anxiety and inability to function in public. She was the only person I had ever felt genuinely comfortable talking to, and I was completely fascinated by her. I looked forward to waking up every day just because I enjoyed her company. Would stay up all night talking and watching TV shows, and I had genuinely started to fall for her. Then one night she said goodnight. We'll talk tomorrow like normal, and I headed off to bed. The next day she didn't come online. A few days went by and I hadn't heard from her at all, and I started to get really worried. I started checking the news and obituaries in her town, but found nothing. I went a little bit mental at this point and couldn't eat or sleep properly for weeks on end. I had no idea what the heck was going on. I genuinely thought I might have completely made the whole thing up, that I was seriously mentally unwell. I thought of her and what could have possibly happened every single day. The anxiety and stress this caused me actually made me physically and mentally ill. This went on for months, and I got worse and worse, eventually leading to a full-blown nervous breakdown. Not going into details on that, but eventually I became functional again. A few months down the line, I decided to look into her a little further to see if I could figure out what had happened and get some closure. I came across a girl on a social media site whose picture she had stolen, and from there, I began to unravel everything. I'm actually doing fairly well now, and I feel a lot healthier than I have in a long, long time. It's weird, but I still think of her from time to time. Despite knowing full well it was either a guy or someone entirely different from the pictures, I still get quite sad knowing I'll never get to talk to them again. And despite it really messing me up for a long time, I'm better for it. I just hope they're doing okay too. The thing I wonder about is, why do they just suddenly stop like that? If I was spewing that level of BS, I'd be fine with just lying about being offended by the person or something and being like, "Don't ever contact me again. I can't believe your opinion on X. You freaking disgust me." At least give them some kind of notice. I mean, damn. So sorry they just dropped off without any explanation for closure, and I'm very glad to hear this guy's doing better. Liking the video so far? Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories like this one. Story 6. A few years ago after a big breakup, I decided to try the online dating scene. I eventually matched with a pretty girl called Corinna, who gave me her Facebook as she said she couldn't chat on the dating site. So, naturally, I added her, but didn't actually strike up any conversation. Just lurked to see what kind of person she was. She was very into playing Call of Duty, so I added her on there and sometimes joined her game. She was always playing with another guy, though. Called Hector, so I was hesitant to interfere and start chatting, but after a while I joined their party, found they had some pretty fun chats, so started talking to them. After a few months of playing COD, we were all good friends, and I used to chat to Corinna on the phone a lot and generally flirt, etc. We all lived in London, so kept saying we should meet up, but plans always fell through. Turns out Corinna had a long-term illness and was in and out of hospital a lot and used to send us photos of her scars and all the equipment she was hooked up to. It also turned out that she had a boyfriend. A weird South African dude called Chris who used to join our COD games and sucked. And he and Corinna would bicker and fight, etc., and he was generally a jerk, telling her he loved her all the time. I had a sneaking suspicion that he was off the same dating website and, like Hector and me, had never actually met her. He'd just taken the whole thing a bit too far and she seemed fed up with it. About 4 months after this whole thing started, still hadn't met up but still flirting, etc. Corinna was in hospital again. And as I was waking up for work one morning, she texted me something like, "I drank a bottle of vodka, I think I'm going to go. Love you, X." I replied jokingly as she had a pretty sick sense of humor, but when I got home from work that day, I went on her Facebook to find tons of RIP messages. Hector had noticed too, and we were totally blown away. She'd passed away. I was pretty shaken up, but felt weird as she was really just a voice in the phone, but also an actual friend. A few months after that, her friend Liz messaged us to come play COD as a memorial to Corinna, so Hector and I started playing with her quite regularly. She was pretty good too, but didn't have a mic. She also kept wanting to meet up. Also told me she liked me, but those plans kept falling through too. Eventually I got fed up and stopped playing Xbox with him for a couple of months. Then when I decided to jump on again, I found her and Hector in a party as usual, so I joined to say hi. Liz had got herself a mic and so we all chatted away. She actually sounded similar to Corinna. Same humor and jokes, etc., which I thought was odd but shrugged it off because Corinna was gone. But my gut feeling got the best of me and I decided to assure myself that I wasn't just crazy. I scoured the internet for other references to these girls but couldn't find anything. They each had hundreds of friends and family on Facebook who they interacted with all the time, so it would have been strange to think it was someone pretending. I found nothing that could allay my suspicions and was getting tired of it, so as a last-ditch attempt, I threw some of Corinna and Liz's photos into Google image search. Nothing until… bam. One of Corinna's hospital photos matched with an American girl's blog about having cystic fibrosis. Several photos of this blog were ones Corinna had sent me. I was onto something, so I kept searching images until… bam. One of Liz's photos directly matched with a girl from Ohio. I'm from the UK. After browsing her profile a bit in astonishment, I checked her friends and there Corinna was too. Not only Corinna, but between the Ohio girls were tons of Liz and Corinna's friends and family, but the real people. After a long time checking all this, it was clear that this one girl had created hundreds of Facebook profiles with stolen photos of all these people, and made them all interact. Pretty arduous task, but hey, some people get bored, I guess. I told Hector, but we kept it quiet for a bit while I surveyed Liz's activity and matched it with the Ohio girl's activity, just to be sure. Eventually, Hector ended up blowing our cover and she started deleting everything. I texted her asking for an explanation, and after denying it for a while, she came clean. I wasn't that pissed off about the deception. I was more intrigued as to why someone would go to such lengths to do this without any apparent gain to themselves. Her story was that she was actually quite ill, bored, and had few friends. Not sure whether that's true, but I didn't really get much more info after that. She wouldn't meet me in person, and we just fell out of contact and she blocked me on most platforms. I kept an eye on her Xbox gamer tag though, and she recently catfished another guy by using a couple of girls, one of whom also had cystic fibrosis. I feel bad for not warning them, but I don't want to get involved with all that again. Found a reference to another CF surfer catfishing a guy into getting married online a few years before my time, so it was probably her too, going by the name she used. Anyway, that's my long story about my first online dating experience and Moriarty to my Sherlock. Story 7. I was in my early 20s at the time and met a girl on one of the chat boards. She was attractive. She had several pictures available, all of which were candid shots and none of the stereotypical model-like photos, so I tended to believe it was legit. After a while, we started talking on the phone and it progressed into a casual relationship and inevitably led to many discussions. The thing is, she lived in the same city as me, so after a month or so, I was saying, "Hey, we need to meet or this isn't going anywhere." She finally gives me her address and tells me to come over the next day. I show up and it is this very sketchy part of town. that is near the penitentiary, and the house probably should have been condemned a few years prior. I started to realize this is a bad idea, but I wanted to see it through. And there was a girl about the same age sitting out front of the house. She knew who I was and said she was the girl's friend and that she should be back soon, so we should just wait for her. This other girl was nice enough, but she probably had an extra 40 pounds on her frame and didn't resemble the girl in the photos at all. Well, soon enough, she gets me into the house and up in the bedroom, and she's talking to me like she's my friend and knows me, etc., etc. I think she was trying to make a move on me, but the entire time I was in horror due to this house. I mean, the place was disgusting. There was garbage everywhere. The bed was just a stained mattress with a partial sheet covering part of it. There was no place to sit aside from the floor. The place smelled like old ashtrays, and in the middle of summer, there was no AC, so it was stuffy and hot. However, I still didn't think it was the same girl because I just didn't recognize the voices being the same. Eventually, it became clear the girl I was expecting wasn't going to show. So I said goodbye and left. Then she contacted me on the phone later and had some sad excuses. She then went out of her way to tell me to not get her confused with her friend because their voices sound a lot alike. And then she made a little comment about her friend being heavy, to which I responded like, yeah, she was. And she tried to brush it off, but you could tell she was offended. Eventually, I figured things out and she denied it, but we stopped talking. A few months go by and she contacts me and says she's dating some guy, I suppose in an attempt to make me jealous. I wasn't. Then a month or so later, she called me to tell me she's pregnant and had all this drama. I just stopped answering her calls and her emails were just more excuses trying to explain why we never met. The whole thing was just odd. I can't believe it took me so long to see the warning signs. A few years later, the house she was living in was torn down by the city and it was now an empty lot. I have no idea what happened to her. She was a ghost. Or she was a figment of your imagination, you just didn't know it. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. Catch you in that video.